Danganronpa.
Hello media lovers, welcome back to the second to last part of this video series. It's really weird that the next chapter is the last one and we're nearly at the end. Hell, I stretched this thing long enough that a new entry in the series got announced. Speaking of, immediately jumping into comments, in reference to this part of the last video, I am literally on the opposite coast from the one I recorded my footage on. But who's gonna sit down and remake the entire game if I stop now? Cargis simply said, who's gonna remake the game? Do they know? Because seriously, how did I manifest that? I'm scared. But going into rewrites, everyone generally agreed that outside of the one issue I had, Chapter 4 is solid. Though regarding rewrites for the other chapters, there's one person I want to shout out since the only other comments I saw go into spoiling Chapter 5. Regarding Chapter 2, Claire Wright sometimes suggested a new way the chapter could have gone down with the same victim and culprit. Quite a few people commented that they've always found Mondo's motive a bit cheap, so they suggested having everyone's secrets be handed out digitally via their e-handbooks. Chihiro goes through the same motions as before with one major extra element. They backdoor their way into the files containing everyone's secrets, either by themselves or via alter ego. I know the original game has Monokuma explicitly say an alarm would ring out, but that's said during the trial and could be easily taken out, especially if you consider the idea that Monokuma purposely left a hole in the security the same way he lets Chihiro mess with the laptop. For the sake of pacing, I'd probably have Monokuma give a longer deadline and Chapter 2 would have a few more days of FTEs, and reveal that Chihiro and Mondo were actually training together for a few nights before the murder. In this rewrite, Chihiro's planning on not just exposing their own secret, but everyone else's, making the entire thing null and void. They reveal this plan to Mondo, and Mondo panics. Claire Wright sometimes suggested making Chihiro's death an accident, making that two deaths that Mondo indirectly caused, but I think it's better if Mondo actually kills Chihiro himself in a crime of passion. I feel like the death being an accident would remove too much of Mondo's agency and undo the best part of this chapter, the themes. Mondo personally choosing to kill the person who represents the true meaning of the strength he strove for. Chihiro deciding to open up to someone who represents what strength and masculinity is meant to be, only to be punished for showing true bravery and strength. A death that shouldn't have happened, but Mondo, even if it was in a split second, made the active decision to cause in the name of preserving the image of his fragile form of masculinity. Chihiro's e-handbook would still be destroyed in the name of hiding their gender, but also because that's where everyone's secrets were now stored. There was also a suggested possibility of Chihiro coming out before their death to the class, so the motive is solely focused on Mondo keeping his secrets, but as the comment itself points out, that would be a massive rewrite. Not saying it couldn't be done, just saying it can't be done in the restraints of a section meant to take place before the main video. I saw quite a few people take issue with Chihiro being outed post-mortem, and others critique the entire premise, with Chihiro, canonically a cis man, trying to avoid harassment by cross-dressing in the first place, and I feel like this is the perfect rewrite if you want to alter the direction of Chihiro's character, as well as getting to show off more of their talent. Furthermore, considering Chihiro made alter ego, this feels very in character, with Chihiro wanting to help take down the killing game at its core. This is basically the only comment I was able to discuss in length here. There were a few others, but they in at least some part bring in elements from chapters 5 and 6. For now, let's just hope that our remaining students can survive whatever chapter 5 brings them.
Mukuro Ikusaba, the 16th student, lying hidden somewhere in this school. The one they call the ultimate despair. Watch out for her.
Makoto informs us that Kyoko's warning came 3 days before the worst thing so far, and yep, that does not look good. Before that though, Byakuya, in what I think is his attempt at being social, declares it's time to investigate the school now that a trial's been done. He claims that everyone will need to follow him in order to escape, and Makoto politely doesn't bring up how humbled he was literally yesterday. Also, Byakuya ordered Toko to not open her mouth unless prompted by him, which if this were any other combination of characters I might have been disturbed by. Anyway, we get to the 5th floor and... what the hell? Ignoring all the weirdness, there's a locked biolab. We keep on getting locked rooms lately, huh? There's also a freaking botanical garden. Are you kidding me? It even has a chicken coop. Why the hell are there 5 live chickens here? What is this school? Though Makoto does have his doubts about them being 5 ordinary chickens instead of some genetically modified monstrosities by Monokuma. Fair. In the shed he finds various gardening tools, including a pickaxe with a very familiar phrase on it. Monokuma also pops up to explain that there's a sprinkler system that goes off at 7:30 each morning, and to not even try altering the timer since the timer's control panel is locked. After that is the dojo. Okay, I wouldn't change this, but I'm genuinely questioning my sanity looking at this and saying it's in a school. It is worth it just to see Kyoko get nostalgic after getting a flashback of last night, since she remembers spending a lot of time overseas and not being able to see cherry blossoms. Also, there are old Japanese wooden lockers, which apparently were common in old-style bathhouses. The more you know. And finally, we get to one of the classrooms and there's no mistaking what horrors happened in this room. The red blood, a horrifying sight after chapters of pink, is apparently the equivalent of brown or black blood, old blood, in the real world. Whatever happened here, it wasn't recent. What's more disturbing, according to Monokuma, he has nothing to do with this. He left this room as he found it. Back in the cafeteria, Aoi and Kyoko point out that there are no stairs going up. This is the last floor. Makoto brings up the tool shed and pickaxe, and after a minute, everyone remembers where they know the phrase crazy diamond from. It's Mondo's gang. That makes 2 items seemingly belonging to students on floors they shouldn't have been able to access. Toko's given permission to speak and reveals she found a knife, specifically, as Byakuya points out, a survival knife. It was found in one of the normal-looking classrooms, which, considering what kind of knife it is and what the other classroom on the floor looks like, paints a disturbing picture. The others force Makoto to take it since no one wants a random knife flying around and, well, he's Makoto. He internally decides to just throw it in his drawer later. Also, Byakuya responds to this find by directly telling Toko she did a good job finding it. And while her creepy stalker tendencies are genuinely problematic, it's honestly heartwarming to see the girl who's clearly not had that many people be kind to her get a genuine compliment from a guy who never gives them out. Not to mention it shows that Byakuya is, in his own antisocial way, trying to be a team player. It's honestly a moment I think would be elevated by Toko's weird behavior towards Byakuya being less sexual and more romantic, since without the weird sexual stuff, this moment isn't bogged down immediately after by Toko saying the most depraved things to someone who clearly doesn't want to hear it. Harassment is never okay, sexually charged or otherwise, but this moment feels, I don't know, like something Toko could internalize and use to form normal relationships with her peers, including Byakuya, instead of using it as an excuse to harass him further. Not to mention it starts off with Toko thinking he's going to insult her and apologizing in advance, and then boom, compliment. Finally, Byakuya brings up the weird classroom, and the students theorize that the clear slaughter that took place was the tragedy we heard about. A group of students were murdered in that room, forcing Hope's Peak to close. Makoto wonders how such a big event could have escaped them all in the news. Byakuya says that before the end of this meeting, he wants to figure something out. He wants to know who Kyoko is. He might have forgotten considering the everything, but Kyoko's ultimate talent, or really anything substantial about her, is a mystery. But when prompted to tell, Kyoko says she can't. Not won't, can't. She doesn't remember what her ultimate talent is. Byakuya says she's lying, and Kyoko says that's why she didn't say anything. Convenient amnesia? Who would believe her? Byakuya gives her an ultimatum. Give him her room key so she poses less of a threat, or tell them the truth. Sleeping outside a dorm room is a rule violation. Makoto only survived earlier in the game because of the technicality of passing out, not being sleeping. Giving up her room key means certain death unless she can pull a Batman and just not sleep for 3 days. Kyoko calmly steps forward and hands Byakuya her key. She doesn't remember, and she's not going to waste time arguing about it. The more trusting students argue that since this is the worst school ever, amnesia isn't off the table. To which Kyoko responds, "Do you really mean that? Can you really be sure that life here has been filled with only the worst things?" And in classic Kyoko fashion, she walks off, leaving everyone more confused than ever. Monokuma shows up before any more awkwardness happens to scream at the students for being thieves. He says one of them stole, and yes, this is exactly what it sounds like, his precious. They all immediately realize Kyoko did something. With an agreement to be extra cautious with this tension in the air, they all go to bed. Around midnight, Kyoko shows up to grab Makoto. In the dressing rooms, Kyoko explains what she stole. It's a key from the headmaster's room. Was that locked, you might be saying? And you're right, it was. But someone broke the lock. It was Sakura. Remember how she said she would fight the mastermind? This was how. She already knew she was gonna die, so she broke a rule. This is what Kyoko was doing when she sent Makoto to the data center. She used him as a decoy to distract Monokuma while she went in. This is how she learned about
Mukuro Ikusaba, the 16th, the one they watch out.
And the key. Regarding Mukuro, Kyoko says that the file in the headmaster's room indicates that she's dangerous. She might even be the mastermind. Makoto points out that this contradicts what Alter Ego told them about the mastermind being the grown male headmaster, but Kyoko's adamant that the headmaster isn't involved despite no proof. Makoto points out that this is strange for Kyoko. Since they can actually talk freely, Kyoko actually asked for Makoto's permission to be a lure for Monokuma this time, so she can go and see where the key goes. Makoto argues a good point. For all they know, there's more than one mastermind, and last night was a lucky fluke. But this makes Kyoko more excited to test this, seeing if the mastermind can control Monokuma while monitoring the school. Besides, theft is not officially against the rules, so since Kyoko didn't break the door and just wandered in, if she gets caught, she's still in the clear. Poor Makoto, clearly terrified, argues that Monokuma could just disregard the rules and kill them anyway, but this just adds another scenario to test out. If cornered or frustrated, will the headmaster stick to their rules? Makoto tries to argue again, but
If you spend all your time trying to avoid danger, you'll never move forward.
Kyoko hands Makoto a note that he's only allowed to open if something happens to her, calling it a symbol of her determination. Makoto says he'll keep it safe so he can give it back to her when this is all over. Makoto lures Monokuma out by screaming for him and asking him what his precious one of them stole is. He dances around it, but eventually blurts out that it's a key and something else, though he's not willing to say. After this delightful chat, Makoto goes to bed, hoping he bought Kyoko enough time. Monokuma Theater! I can't not bring this one up.
Monokuma Theater, brought to you by Spike Toonsoft Company Limited. Then you guys have to recommend it to your friends, too!
I still can't believe this is real. Someone rendered that. So anyway, Makoto's not feeling good, but he makes it to the dining hall anyway for breakfast. Byakuya's mad at Makoto for being late, Toko's horny, is she getting worse? And Aoi and Hiro are worried about Toko, who hasn't shown up at all. Wanna know who else wants to know about Kyoko's whereabouts? Monokuma, who pops up to try to get information out of the group. She's completely disappeared, and while it's scary to not know where she is, knowing that Monokuma doesn't know either is kind of reassuring. The group briefly considers looking for her, but concludes that if Monokuma can't find her, they'd have even less luck. It's a day of FTEs, though Makoto comments on feeling worse and worse as the day progresses. Before nighttime even hits, he's calling it a day and passing out. Though I can't help mentioning, Makoto, I understand having chills, but your body temperature would be getting back to normal way faster if you took off that hoodie. Makoto enters that weird place between consciousness and unconsciousness you're in when sick and has a weird dream, or is it a memory? It's himself, saying he shouldn't be trying to leave this school. His goal is to stay here for the sake of hope. Makoto doesn't have time to dwell on that though, because he's getting attacked. Again! His assailant, donning a familiar luchador mask and wielding a certain knife, startles Makoto into screaming. There's the sound of an impact, then of someone running, and then Kyoko's looming over him. She's saying something, but everything's too hazy for Makoto to make it out. He passes out again. When morning comes, Makoto's fever is broken. Searching for evidence that last night wasn't a dream, he looks in his drawer, and the hunting knife is gone. Not really able to do anything about that, Makoto heads to the dining hall and finds Aoi. She says everyone, minus Kyoko, who's still missing, was worried about him, and how they came to his room at midnight. Makoto says he was too busy sleeping off a fever to do anything, much less answer a door, and asks if anything happened. Aoi says yes, a lot actually, and it would be better to show him, leading him to the gym, where they find... Well, that's a way to start a morning. So it turns out that Byakuya found Monokuma just standing around, not doing anything, and they all took this as a golden opportunity to see what makes these things tick. They're not sure why Monokuma shut down. Nothing seemed to be wrong with it from what they could tell, so that only really leads to another possibility. Nothing's wrong with the Monokuma machinery, just its user. Yep, Byakuya suspects that something happened to the mastermind. So anyway, Hiro finds a bomb. Yeah, remember that thing that happened at the start of the game? It turns out it wasn't a one-time deal. Every Monokuma model probably has one of these things inside it. Makoto wonders if this whole thing's connected to the masked person in the room, but decides to keep it to himself for now. Everyone decides this is their chance to break into the headmaster's room, only to find the door locked. Well, I guess Monokuma fixed it. Anyway, Makoto suggests the crazy diamond pickaxe in the shed, and Byakuya orders Toko to get. Specifically, it's 9 now, and she has until 9:01 to get back. Dude, I spent paragraphs talking about how you were getting better. Do not embarrass me. Fukawa does get back on time, though, with no pickaxe and also not the same identity. Jill's back with no understanding why her body was in the garden, and after being told about Toko's orders, that only leaves one question in her mind. What's up with the corpse? At that, everyone runs off to see what she's talking about, and sure enough, we've caught up to the flash forward. Okay, I'm going to admit, there's not much I can say about this section, because it involves a lot of setup for things later down the line, so in lieu of being able to actually say anything, I'm gonna take this time to do a meta fun fact. Remember how Monokuma said they left the bloody classroom as he found it? Ignoring the haunting implications of that, this might double as a reference to Beta Danganronpa, aka Distrust. Not too much is known about Distrust since it was very early in Danganronpa's development, but before the team decided on their psychopop theme, this game was going to be darker and grungier, even taking place in a warehouse that was set up to look like a classroom instead of an actual school. I mean, it was gonna have red blood and everything. I know, weird concept. Even the executions might have initially been more hands-on. While we have the concept video for Beta Leon being executed in the same way as the final game, in a possibly earlier concept, we see the student seemingly descending on Beta Junko and forcing her head into a guillotine. Also, depending on when in this process we're talking about, Monokuma didn't exist. It was this abomination. So this classroom and the fact that Monokuma left it as he found it might double as a disturbing implication in-game and a fun little in-joke for the team, a single remnant of what Danganronpa could have been if they decided to stick with the darker tone. Anyway, that was fun. I enjoyed myself with that. Unlike the students right now. Byakuya points out that the blood on the body is still wet, and Aoi calls out that the figure looks female. Before they can do anything else though, Jill gets sick of guessing who the victim is and goes for the mask, and... Oh, this is gonna be spicy. After putting out the fire that engulfed the top half of the body, everyone except for Makoto gives their guess for who the victim is, Kyoko. After all, the body's female and she's the only one not present. Byakuya does present a different theory, that it's the mastermind, hence why Monokuma is deactivated. Hiro says it can't be, bringing up Alter Ego's description of the mastermind, and Makoto decides that it's time for the others to be let in on... Of course, this only leads to the question of how the possible mastermind got stabbed in the garden, but who cares? If the mastermind is dead, they can find a way to escape. Makoto finds the key next to the body and goes ahead of the others to find where it leads. He comes back to tell them it's for the data center. Finally, one of these damned rooms is unlocked. After Aoi voices concern that the door might be booby-trapped, Byakuya orders Makoto to open the door while the rest of them stay far, far back. Because he trusts him, obviously. Thanks, Byakuya, you're such a good friend. Luckily, Makoto's fine, and we get a good look at the data room. Yeah, this would explain how Monokuma is able to see the murders. Oh, what's up with that door? It's locked, don't worry about it. This does seem to confirm that the body in the garden is the mastermind's though, considering they had this key. While the students are here, they might as well figure out who killed them, as well as solve the lingering mysteries of why this happened to them in the first place. Noticing a TV in the room, Hiro goes to work hooking up the antenna. And once he gets the TV working... That's not how that works. That's not me criticizing the writing. They point out that the antenna signal logically shouldn't be showing the surveillance footage. Luckily, Monokuma's here to explain what's up. Wait. Yeah, he's back. He avoided bringing out a new spare just to watch the class's hope come crashing down. But as I said, he does explain the TV. Yes, it's broadcasting the surveillance footage. How? Well, Occam's razor. The security footage is being broadcast to the world. Yep, the mastermind took control of the airwaves, and this whole time, the outside world's been able to see what's happening to them. It's pointed out that at bare minimum, the police will have shown up to rescue them. Monokuma's response? What if they already did? Everyone has questions, but Monokuma tells them to deal with them later. After all,
A body has been discovered! After a certain amount of time, which you may use however you like, the class trial will begin.
more than 3 people saw the body. Why wouldn't there be a class trial? Everyone's railing from this, but Byakuya tells them to snap out of it. After all, they need to find out who killed Kyoko. With the masterminds clearly alive, well, there's only one conclusion, right? Makoto doesn't take this well, but the investigation starts anyway. Let's do this. Here's the body before the explosion. Take a good look at it. Also, Makoto points out the lack of blood on the ground. The Monokuma file doesn't name the victim, but confirms they were dead before the explosion. They were stabbed once with a knife all the way through the body and were hit in the head with an object as thick as a pipe. They have scars all over their body, but they're several days old. The victim has long, fake nails and a wolf tattoo. The lower half of the body is dry, the upper wet where Makoto threw water to put out the fire. The knife used is the missing survival knife. Well, that's fun. There are fragments of something near the body. Let me save you 5 minutes. It's the bomb found in Monokuma earlier. There are 4 chickens in the coop. According to Hiro, all 5 were there right before nighttime yesterday. We get a reminder that the sprinklers go off at 7:30 a.m. In the shed, there's a tarp that's dirty and wet on one side. According to everyone's alibis, here's everyone's location. Hiro was in the garden right before nighttime last night, and Byakuya found him there right after, looking for everyone else to say Monokuma was deactivated. There was no body then. Throughout the entire night, Byakuya, Aoi, Toko, and Hiro stayed in the gym to dismantle Monokuma, and went to the bathroom in pairs. Makoto met up with Aoi at 7:30 a.m. At that point, everyone minus Kyoko was together until Toko found the body at 9. Worried for Kyoko, Makoto asks Byakuya for access to Kyoko's room since he still has her key. He agrees, and Makoto finds a key to one of those wooden dojo lockers. Finding nothing else, Makoto remembers the notes Kyoko left him. It says under the sheets, and when looking under there, he finds Mukuro Ikusaba's student profile. I guess we know what the blank earlier was. She's called the Ultimate Soldier, not the Ultimate Despair here. She apparently got the title after disappearing on a family trip in Europe, only to reappear 3 years later and revealed she joined a mercenary group, Fenrir. Makoto thinks this is crazy. For Byakuya, it's Tuesday. He's heard of Fenrir. Monokuma shows up at this point to drop some lore. According to him, the one who wrote the rules for the killing game, as he says, is one of the participants. He confirms there are 16 in total. When Byakuya asks him why he's telling them this, he says it's for those watching in the outside world so everyone's on the same page. He's also here out of spite. Kyoko is right. Since she didn't break the door herself, she can't be punished for stealing from the headmaster's room. Monokuma can be petty though. You know how I mentioned last chapter that Kyoko's gloves were a reminder of a betrayal she suffered? Monokuma adds to that. She's covering some nasty scars that she's self-conscious of. In the dojo, Makoto and Byakuya find the locker, which holds multiple titanium arrows and bloody duct tape. And we're being dragged to the archive again. Byakuya finds a file that mentions Fenrir. While the fact that they ceased all activity recently is interesting, the only thing that matters here is that members got a tattoo of the mythological wolf somewhere on their body. With that, the bell rings and investigation time is over. Everyone gathers in front of the elevator and nothing. Monokuma doesn't show up. They wait and wait, and after 15 minutes, everyone's annoyed when he finally shows up. Though according to Monokuma, he is not the one making them late. At that moment, Kyoko shows up, and Hiro panics, thinking she's a ghost since she's obviously the victim of this case. Makoto quietly asks Kyoko where she was, guessing that weird key of hers led her to somewhere. He's right. Turns out it's a skeleton key, and Kyoko used it to unlock the second floor of the dorms. Holy crap, someone actually remembered that exists. Good for you, Kyoko. Turns out there are no cameras or monitors up there, so she missed the announcement and barely had time to investigate the garden. Kyoko promises to let Makoto in on the details after the case, saying this is a crucial moment. And onto the elevator they go. Why? The first part of this trial is infamous, because we have to prove that the victim isn't Kyoko. Yeah, Hiro's fully convinced that she's a ghost. Byakuya doesn't hesitate to explain the scar situation. Rude. And Makoto points out the fake nails, which make no sense if Kyoko's just gonna wear gloves all day.
Then that's that. The dead body doesn't belong to Kyoko.
Which should have been obvious since she's standing right here.
That line delivery. I know it's not the OG Japanese, but that one single line is why I would never take this out of the game. Makoto then goes on to prove that the victim is Mukuro via the Fenrir tattoo. Toko confirms that detail makes sense based on Norse mythology, finally showing off her ultimate talent of writing prodigy. This, of course, freaks out the others, since from their perspective, Mukuro should have been the mastermind. But Monokuma confirms it. This is the murder trial for Mukuro Ikusaba. And this is where the trial reveals how twisted it's gonna be. The Ultimate Despair is a pretty mastermindy title, but there's only one source for that talent. You've seen it 5 times now. Kyoko is the only one who calls her that. Mukuro's actual profile just says Ultimate Soldier. There's some brief tension between Byakuya and Toko, with Byakuya saying that Kyoko's information about Mukuro and her insistence that the headmaster isn't in on it can't be trusted, and Kyoko insisting she isn't wrong, but Monokuma tells them to stay on track. He also reminds them how these trials work. A murder among the students brought us here. In other words, Mukuro's murderer is one of the remaining 6. Or more specifically, 1 of 2. Based on the timeline of events, only Kyoko or Makoto could have done it. They are the only ones with no alibi. Makoto tries to narrow down the time of the murder, or at least the moving of the body. Byakuya and Hiro can confirm it wasn't in the garden at 10 p.m. last night, and Toko discovered the body at 9 a.m. that morning. Makoto's accounted for at 7:30 a.m. by Aoi. 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. That's a pretty wide time frame to commit murder. Unless, of course, that time frame is wrong from the start. Remember the sprinklers? They go off at 7:30 each morning. Assuming they're like regular sprinklers, if the body was in the garden anytime before, say, 7:50, it would be soaked, but it's dry. Toko points out the top half, but remember, that's where Makoto put out the fire. The bottom was still dry. This new time frame gives Makoto an alibi, which only leaves Kyoko. Kyoko said before that she doesn't enjoy the idea of dying a meaningless death, and we're about to see just how much she meant that. Kyoko calls this whole thing a trap set by the mastermind. Furthermore, she had no motive to kill Mukuro. Byakuya begs to differ. Between the ultimate despair talk and clearly seeing Mukuro as the mastermind, that's a motive anyone in this room would have for killing her. A motive and no alibi. It seems clear. So Kyoko switches tactics. She might have a motive, but Makoto's alibi isn't as watertight as he might think. Literally. The tarp in the shed is dirty and wet, remember? Someone probably used it to keep the body dry to say something like, I don't know, the body couldn't have been in the garden before 7:30. Makoto fights back. Sure, the tarp being wet on one side is suspect, but so is the other side being clean. After all, the body had wet blood on it. Covering it in a tarp would have left a mark, and cleaning it would have left the other side clean or with weird patterns in the dirt. Kyoko suspects the blood is camouflage, however. Remember how there's only 4 chickens now? One of them offered a blood sacrifice. After taking the tarp off, the culprit killed the chicken and covered the body in its blood. Aoi laments someone killing the poor thing without at least eating it too, by the way. Furthermore, well, let's look at the body again. Notice anything weird besides the mask, I mean? Notice how the coat is just lying on top of the body? The blood was applied to the coat beforehand, then placed on the body, hence the lack of blood on the ground. And considering Makoto went on his own to figure out the source of the data lab key, well, taking off a tarp and draping a coat doesn't take much time, does it? And to make things worse for Makoto, him keeping his mouth shut comes to bite him in the ass. Aoi finally recognizes the knife as the one they gave him. Makoto deflects this by pointing out the cover-up they just went over. If the blood on the coat was a disguise made to look like a stab wound through the coat, the stab wound couldn't have been the fatal wound. All this evidence paints a picture. Someone stole the knife Makoto was openly given and used the tarp and coat. They then blew up the body with Monokuma's bomb to hide the real cause of death and pin it all on Makoto. The only person who would benefit from that would be the only other person here without an alibi. Makoto wants the whole picture, and with the knife thrown out, they don't know what killed Mukuro. The multiple wounds on her body are brought up, but those are days old. That leaves the blow to the head as the cause of death. They haven't come across anything that fits the description of something like a metal pipe, right? Remember the arrows on the duct tape? Yep, the arrows were taped together. The arrow was found in the dojo locker. And where did they find the key to that locker again? Makoto hesitantly confirms this fact, and Kyoko seems confused that the key was in her room. Byakuya calls it a bluff. Makoto takes this time to ask Kyoko what she was even doing in his room last night. And after this whole trial, the throwing under the bus, her answer might be a little shocking.
I was just protecting you.
What?
Makoto's sent spiraling at this, the idea that Kyoko committed murder to protect him. At this point, Kyoko pulls one hell of a Hail Mary. The final piece of evidence is that the locker key was found in her room, right? But shouldn't Byakuya, of all people, know that she couldn't have done it then? After all, he has her room key. She couldn't get into her room. Except it's a lie, isn't it? We know. Makoto knows that Kyoko has access to her room. She has a skeleton key, after all. She could easily get in. Makoto's surprised. A desperate lie like that, does that mean Kyoko's the killer? Or does it mean something else? It's at this point we're presented with a choice. Call her out on her lie, or keep quiet. For the sake of completion, I'll go into pursuing the lie first. Makoto brings up the skeleton key, and Kyoko admits defeat. After all, Byakuya would have just demanded Kyoko be searched if she didn't just accept this loss. She doesn't confess to the murder, though. It was a trap, and I was unable to escape it. And she's right. Something about this trial feels off somehow. Even the way that she and Makoto were fighting back and forth feels like they were just playing into something. I considered skipping this, but the other way this trial ends is infamously copyright restricted, so this way I can talk about it without worrying about having to cut away every other second. After school lesson, or if we're going by the superior OG name, detention, is terrifying. Kyoko is trapped sitting at a desk on a conveyor belt, slowly moving towards a block, falling over and over. Hearing it get closer, but not wanting to turn around to see it. Kyoko can't even keep her trademark stoicism, it's that scary. Oh, and Monokuma's teaching sex ed the whole time. Fun. It's simple, but effective. And the last thing we hear in the execution is Kyoko being crushed. Kyoko Kirigiri dies, and you've just unlocked the bad end, where the 5 survivors remain in the school and give up on solving its mysteries. They age. Aoi seemingly has all of their kids. Toko might be dead, but I like to imagine she's just holding the camera. Byakuya likes leather jackets now, and Makoto explains that this fragile piece is their only hope. He then questions if this is even really hope, and we're thrown back to try again. Now to show the real answer. Makoto doesn't snitch, and with the class as stalemates, Byakuya can only come to one conclusion. Makoto only pretended to find the dojo clean in Kyoko's room. He'd been carrying it all along and called it out once they were in the room itself. At that moment, Monokuma says time's up, something that's never happened before. Kyoko protests, but Monokuma says it's because she was late and that took time away from the trial. But as I implied before, something is off. For reference, when I was getting footage for this video, Chapter 2's trial, not Deadly Life, just the trial, until they're told to vote, took me about an hour and 15 minutes. Chapter 5? Less than an hour, including playing through the bad end. It's at this point you might have noticed we weren't given a chance in either ending to summarize the case. No closing argument, just voting time. The majority votes for Makoto and it's correct? Yep, Monokuma says Makoto's the killer. The poor boy calls out to the frustrated Kyoko, and all she can say is that she understands if he doesn't forgive her. Makoto doesn't have time to think about that though. It's his turn. Makoto's thrown into his punishment, which is the same as Kyoko's, but unlike what happened during Kyoko's version, an old friend comes to help Makoto. Ultra Ego appears on the compactor screen and stops it, opening a trapdoor that Makoto falls through. Yep, before his demise, Ultra Ego planted a virus, just in case. Apparently he was the real one to get the last laugh. Kyoko says Monokuma underestimated the class, but the bear says that Makoto's fall would have led him to the garbage dump below the school, and that's arguably an even better punishment. After he leaves though, Kyoko tells the other students he's putting on a face. He's backed into a corner and he knows it. They ask what she means, and she says they'll know soon enough. The opening narration starts talking about Hope's Peak Academy, a government-funded high school that, wait, hold on. Makoto, for the second time, wakes up at a desk, though this time it's in a place more unsettling than a boarded-up classroom. Surrounded by trash and weird, familiar objects, Makoto declares he's gonna make it out of this, refusing to squander the life his friends gave the last of his strength to save. Unable to leave through the door up there or find any safe food or water, Makoto manages to survive down there for at least 24 hours before a crash wakes him up. And when he goes to investigate the giant piece of trash that fell...
Just a second.
Food and water on hand, Kyoko has come to save our poor boy. She says she's rescuing him to atone for betraying him during the trial, something Makoto tries to brush off, but Kyoko tells it how it is. While he was willing to keep his mouth shut, she was so determined to survive that the first opportunity, she threw him under the bus. Kyoko basically apologizes here for being so weird when asking for help from him throughout the game, admitting that since she never does that, she didn't know how and just dragged him along. The reason she's been so aloof and investigating alone? The mastermind could easily be one of the students, so working together could be a risk. She only chose Makoto to be her Watson because he was the least likely candidate. There's also a personal reason she's been working alone, the same reason she was so stubborn during that last trial. Initially, she didn't know what it was. The amnesia stole that from her, but she still felt the drive to keep going, so she acted on instinct. But now, the fog is starting to lift. She remembers her talent. Kyoko Kirigiri is the ultimate detective. Pause for shocked gasps. She also remembers her purpose, to confront the headmaster. Not because he's the mastermind, she's been openly against that idea. No. The headmaster is her father. Pause for actual shocked gasps. Though that's not why she thinks he's not the mastermind. Apparently when she broke into the headmaster's room, it was ransacked by someone clearly looking for something. Not really the actions of someone who would know where everything is already. This was also around the time she investigated the second floor of the dorms. She tells Makoto that upon seeing it, she realized whatever's happening in the school is probably worse than they can imagine. But Makoto will have to see it for himself to understand. They're in the endgame now, and they know it. Remember, neither Kyoko nor Makoto killed Mukuro Ikusaba, and all the others had genuine alibis. The headmaster was involved somehow, and they took advantage of a death none of the students could claim to try to get rid of Kyoko. Kyoko also poses a disturbing theory. The mastermind clearly wanted Makoto out of the way too, laying down enough clues to blame him in case Kyoko didn't get voted out. But besides that, remember, Kyoko protected Makoto the night before. If Kyoko hadn't stopped the masked figure, it's possible she was going to be pinned for the murder of Makoto. But that masked assailant ended up dead, right? So what's that about? Well, it turns out Makoto wasn't too off earlier when he suggested there were two masterminds. Kyoko thinks the same thing. She wasn't wrong calling Mukuro the ultimate despair, but with her dead, she thinks that Makoto's theory earlier was right. Ultimate despair is not just one person. Whatever caused them to be trapped here, whatever caused the tragedy, it's too big for one high school girl to do alone. Whatever group Ultimate Despair is, it's their true enemy, one they're gonna have to face soon. The count stays at 6, and the chapter ends. This Steadily Life is definitely one of the weakest, everyone agrees on that, but that's also by design. It's in-universe rushed, and even the execution, while one of my favorites due to the dread it fills you with, feels like the mastermind slapped it together at the last minute with no care for theme just so we'd have something ready to go to kill Kyoko or Makoto. I mean, come on, the theme was being a student. This is a fairly forgivable offense, though I hesitate to call it that, since this chapter isn't really about the trial. It's about the mystery of this school and Mukuro and what the hell her true role is in all this, especially now that she's dead. There is one aspect of this that I couldn't just casually bring up during my summary though, and it's part of the gameplay. I know, I said I wouldn't dive into it, but let me have my fun. I'm not really the biggest fan of how they present us with the choice to out Kyoko or not. This is a big moment in the case, and for it to just come down to a multiple choice question doesn't give it the weight it deserves in my opinion. It also kind of insults the intelligence of the player. We've been getting dialogue calling this trial's legitimacy into question since the beginning, and right before this choice, Makoto thinks about Kyoko's reasons for lying, pointing out once again that this trial might be a sham, a trap. I personally think this gives us plenty of warning. I say after Makoto thinks that we should be thrown into a non-stop debate with just one truth bullet regardless of what difficulty you're on. Kyoko's statement mentioning the key. Like any other non-stop debate, if you go through each statement and do nothing, you're given another chance. But if you do nothing twice in a row, the game takes that as your sign of being silent. If you shoot down Kyoko, you get the bad ending obviously, but if you don't do anything, you continue on with the canon route. Funny enough, I think the team at Spike Chunsoft agrees with me on this. There's a similar moment in a later game where we're presented with the choice to essentially not play by the trial's established rules, with dialogue hinting at that being the right answer beforehand. The story continues if you break those rules. If that's how the team, years into this franchise, decided to handle a similar moment, it wouldn't surprise me if that's what they wish they'd done here in hindsight. But other than that, I like this trial as it is. It's rushed, but that also gives us more time for the next trial. It leaves you scared about what's gonna happen, right now that Monokuma lied in a trial, but with Ultra Ego's final FU, it gives you hope that you can beat the masterminds at their own game. Ideally, that hope will be enough to carry everyone to victory as we go into the 6th and final chapter.